Subscribe to our YouTube channel for in-depth interviews of India Inc. and press the bell icon so that you do not miss our updates.
Hello and welcome to Nirmal Bang, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hiral Dadia. We have with us Mr. Anand Bagri, Head Domestic Markets at RBL Bank, joining in. Welcome to the show, Anand. It's a pleasure to have you and speak to you as well.
Thanks, Cyril. Thanks for having me here. The pleasure is entirely mine. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Anand, my first question coming to you is we've seen the kind of impact COVID has actually had on different economies. I mean, no one has been spared, may it be a developed or even for that matter, an emerging market. Uh, Taking the impact into consideration, where would you firstly place India currently?
So, if you look at some of the high frequency indicators, some of the indicators that have been released, be it auto sales, car sales, the motorcycle sales, the PMI, the indicators which have been, in fact, the service PMI which came at 54 yesterday, it's a 8 month high. Possibly it's closed over 50 after a long period of time. So
Mm,
actually, a lot of indicators are now pointing towards the Indian economy would be back in shape in a couple of months. We just need to see whether this sustains over a period of time, because
mm,
there was a lot of this pent up demand, so as to say the system, the revenge buying which had happened. So, for example, auto sales which didn't happen over the last couple of months, possibly because of the festive season and all. People are
mm,
basically people are the pent up demand is there. But the other thing is there was also this issue. People were saying that everyone would like to conserve money and maybe not spend for the next couple of months at least. At least we are seeing people opening up on that front. I see a lot of renovation which is happening in some of the buildings. A lot of real estate deals are also happening. Maybe
mm.
because of the record interest, low interest rates, or because of the stamp duty dispensation which is there. But you see that a lot of movement is happening actually in that space too. And real estate could be a big game changer for India, because it's been basically there's been a big lull in the sector for the last couple of years. So if you look at some of the early indicators, I think obviously the proof of pudding would lie in the eating, but I think the early indicators point towards some green shoots in the system. I think with the momentum, if the momentum carries on, possibly we would be in a much better shape over the next couple of months.
Right.
So
So,
India,
with
in that manner, is quite in a sweet spot at this point of time, because of the inherent demand, the consumption demand which is there in the system, and also because of the low interest rates which are there.
right. So, Anand, with this, if we see a second wave, and a lot of them are of the opinion that probably the second wave has already started in India. Do you think that's something which will probably uh, disrupt the economy or the market, or do you think the disruption that it has already caused, say with regards to industries, sectors, that will be way lower and there will be resilience?
I think there would be too much of resilience this time. I think last time we were unprepared. The medical protocols were also not there, and the only solution which seemed to be in sight was lockdown. I think there is no going back now. Possibly we have learned how to live with it, and I think a lot of sectors are now opening up. A lot of states have also opened up. In such a scenario, I think it would be very difficult to go back to where we were in the months of March and April and May.
Mm,
I think over the next couple of months, even though there is a little bit of ups and downs in the numbers, I think possibly the worst is behind us, and I would possibly be looking at the positives only. The second wave, possibly, in my sense, in India, because of the herd immunity which is there. I am obviously not a medical expert, but I think the herd
mm.
immunity in India and these in the Indian subcontinent is basically going to help us. So my sense is possibly the worst is behind us, and we wouldn't be looking back to those gory days again.
Right. So, would it be right to say that we do not see any risk to earnings and a repeat of the June quarter performance for India Inc.?
I wouldn't be expecting something like that in the near future.
Right. And with all of this, clearly, if you go to see the way the economy has started to open up, how far do you think are we away from a full recovery kicking in?
See, I think currently what is happening is the pent-up demand, the revenge buying or the revenge travel which the people are doing. We'll have to see whether this turns into a full-fledged one. People might still be wary of getting into investing their 100% of
Hmm.
whatever they used to do earlier. So I think there is still some time. I think the long term, it's the government which has been pushing the government expenditure is actually pushing a lot of a lot of output and a lot of growth in the system. We'll have to see how the private corporations also, if they join the bandwagon, and possibly I still see a long term possibly sustenance could happen only after a couple of maybe is at least 6 months to 1 year down the line at least.
Hmm.
Though a full-fledged recovery could take at least 1.5 2 years.
Right. And overall, as well, given that what's happening in the Indian markets as well, we've again reclaimed important and psychological crucial levels after the kind of lows that we saw in the month of March. Yes, this current month itself, in terms of October, did see some bit of selling pressure, but that was due to the global events that were lined up. Do you think this once again could be a time for emerging markets?
The equities front,
Yes.
see, I think on the emerging markets we have seen a lot of run up, especially in India. I don't think we are going to see the March to May numbers again, but I still feel that there could be some correction, basically on the benchmark on the index level. However, there could be sector rotation. There are a lot of sectors which have been beaten down, and possibly and some buying could come in those sectors. I think there's a too much of liquidity is going to remain in the system, both domestically and obviously overseas. It's going to remain in the system. So over the next 6 to 12 months, I think the liquidity overhang is going to continue. No one is going to the kind of taper tantrums which we saw earlier in 2015, 16 and all. I think that is not going to happen so soon, so fast, because as it is, the European nations and the US is still grappling with all these issues.
Mm.
So I think the liquidity, any which is going to find its way into the emerging economies, because with the kind of interest rates in the developed world, I think the money flow is going to definitely come here. Plus, you are going to see a good growth momentum also in the emerging economy. So
Right.
I think the equities, there could be some correction, but
Hmm.
obviously I feel that over a period of time we are going to do good.
Right. So, Anand, when we are saying that, you could see a lot of liquidity that would be flowing into emerging markets like India, do you think it would come into the equity segment, or do you think there would be no more funds infused with regards to the sovereign bond markets? Because that's where we are seeing a lot of action right now.
So I think the flow is going to be both on the debt side and on the equity side. The debt side, I think there's a lot of comfort being drawn from the fact that the country has a lot of forex FX reserves also. The kind of rating downgrade, the fear that was there, I think is now a thing of the past. So I think people would be more comfortable. We saw some bit of unwinding happening in the first couple of months of this calendar year. But I think gradually people would be comfortable in investing in India as it is. The yield spreads are at very attractive levels,
Mm.
and if you expect the currency to remain stable or maybe with the kind of with a low depreciation over a couple of years, I think that would be really attractive for India, both on the government and on the corporate bond space.
Right. And then with this, what's happened is that in terms of changes, a lot of behavioral changes have come in on the back of COVID, and they have been an immediate reaction to the crisis. Now, with this, we've seen tectonic changes as well. Do you think these changes that we've seen in terms of behavior, say from the consumption side, say from the utilization point of view, do you think that's something which will probably remain? Because I'll give you an example. For example, for that matter, on HUL, they've been trying to promote use of sanitizers, hand washes for a really long time. And suddenly, right now, due to this, you've seen a spurt with regards to where demand is concerned. Simultaneously, even if you see, apart from sanitization on the digital front as well, you've seen a spurt in demand with a lot of product categories. Do you think this is something which will remain from here on?
So I think the developments that have happened on the digitization space, I think that is going to continue because the government has also been pushing this move over the since the last couple of years, and suddenly we have seen a lot of spurt in this segment, and people have seen the convenience of this of some of these things also. So, for example, even if someone is not carrying a physical currency, but someone is carrying a mobile phone, he's comfortable now because he knows that wherever he's stuck, he can make the payment or his job will be done. So I think there's a lot of ease, a lot of convenience also which people have seen, and possibly because of some of these factors, this is going to continue. And the shift which has happened is for good. I think it's a permanent shift which has happened into some of these sectors, and which obviously happens after every such episodic event which happens in the system. So I think this is going to continue for good, at least for the next couple of years unless there is another big episodic event like this.
Right. So, which sectors do you think are opportunities to enter on the back of COVID crisis, according to you?
Uh, while I'm not an expert on the equity side, I would see that there are a lot of sectors which possibly are looking good because of the valuation gap which is there in the markets. For example, you would see some of these pharma stocks. Pharma stocks are actually not performing for the last 3-4 years. In fact, the pharma index was hovering in the 6 to 7,000 range for a lot of time, and suddenly it saw a spurt, and now we are seeing that pharma has crossed the 10th crucial 10,000 levels also. So similarly, I think that there's a lot of action still on the auto space or on the banking side because banks are still available at a very low price to book. And I think after every such episode happens, it is basically a cleansing for the banks also. The excesses which might have been built over a couple of years, the banks actually basically shed this weight and become leaner and fitter to move ahead. So I think there's a lot of action which could be seen on the banks, which on the financial space. There's a lot of action which could happen on the insurance side, on the AMC side. So these are the sectors where I think basically over a couple of years we would see a lot of value would be created.
Right. And moving from the equity side, if you have to look at money markets as well, uh, as we were talking earlier, the RBI has done enough with regards to where the stimulus is concerned, and they have been helping on a constant basis. Now, the last monetary policy as well, Anand, do you think that the bond markets participants are actually cherishing the measures that have been proposed by the governor in his last monetary policy?
Yeah. See, I think RBI has been very proactive in the markets, right? Since the beginning of this crisis, RBI has been basically ahead of the curve, so as to say. They have come out with very proactive measures, which were beyond the expectation of the markets also, and so markets have been always positively surprised on that front. While I see that the RBI has done a lot on the rates front, I think there's a very low marginal utility of cutting rates further. As it is, you would have seen that the inflation continues to remain very high. The inflation, there are two parts to it. One could be the structural supply led disruptions which have fed into the inflation. There's also a very strong demand push which is also there. So if you see that there's a pent up demand, I think the demand push is also there, which is also feeding into inflation. So we can't simply write it off saying that it's the inflation is high only because of supply disruptions. Obviously, you would see the inflation cooling off uh, by the end of this year, because last December we were sitting on a very high base. So possibly from January onwards, the CPI inflation would come in the RBI comfort zone. But still, I think 60 to 70% of the inflation is basically because of food and fuel. And food and fuel, I think the prices are not going to come down so easily. In fact, the prices continue to remain at record high. Even though that this could be transient inflation, but I think if the headline inflation continues to remain high, there will be very low scope for a rate cut. So I think even if there's a scope, there is a very small outside chance of a 25 basis points rate cut or a 35 basis points rate cut in the December policy. However, what has been achieved is the short-term rates have fallen a lot, and basically corporates are able, both government and corporates are able to raise money for their working capital at a very cheaper rate because of this, because of the sharp drop in the short-term side of the rates. RBI, the monetary policy also raised concerns at the long term. Basically, if you look at the 10-year yield was hovering at around 6%, 5.25 to 6 when the monetary policy happened. And the short term rates, 1-year T-bill, for example, is around 3.5. So the spread between the 1-year and the 10-year is around 250 basis points, which is one of the record highs. Generally, it remains in a range of around 50 to 75 basis points. So I think the RBI is also, this is also because of the huge borrowing number, because the government is borrowing almost 12 lakh crores, plus there are states also which are borrowing. Because of the fiscal concerns, obviously the 10-year yield is so high. So I think if you look at both these factors, I think the positives and the negatives would offset each other here. And I think the expectation is that the 10-year yield would remain in a zone of around 5.60 to 6%. It is not going to fall too fast, also too fast and too low rather than from these levels also because of the inflation which is going to remain sticky. And at higher levels, I think obviously there would be a demand from both the banks and the OMO interventions by RBI. So I think it's going to remain in the 5.60 to 6% range.
Right.
But the market is basically, the RBI has been very proactive in the markets, and that is why we see so much of stability which is there in the money market side.
Right. So when you talk about the yield curve in India as well, Anand, it is steep, which is really attractive. Now, do you think that RBI's efforts to go ahead and suppress bond rates via yield curve adventures, that's something which could actually endanger their own inflation target?
See, it's a catch-22 situation. The inflation is high on account of food and fuel prices. If you see the money supply, in fact, if you read the monetary policy MPC minutes also, so they have given a breakup of the factors which are pushing inflation high. And almost 70% of that is primarily on account of food and attendant and fuel. Only 6 to 7% is because of the excess money supply, which is because of the excess money supply which is there in the system. So I think as things stand today, the excess money supply is not hurting inflation. But if it were to remain too low and plus the growth also picks up, then possibly it could feed into inflation. So I think RBI is very watchful of some of these events, and obviously RBI. And it wouldn't take much time for the rates to be shifted from reverse repo to repo, and that could be done in a very small period of time. So I think we should not be too bothered about it as things stand today. I think we are in safe hands.
Right. And overall, with this as well, clearly, if you go to see, do you think that the RBI is indicating its intent to bring down bond yields in the near term through open market operations? And with this, what's the quantum of OMOs are you expecting in FY21 as a whole?
See, I think the intent here is that the rates remain range bound. Basically, if they remain in a comfort zone of 5.60 to 6%, also 5.60 to 6%, I think RBI would be comfortable with that, because I think overall with the kind of the signals for growth that we are seeing, I think we can't keep a very accommodative policy for too long. So I think sooner or later this has to reverse, maybe 6 months down the line or 8 months down the line. So sooner or later this has to reverse. The long-term rates are continue to remain in a comfort zone. Even if you would have seen in a normal case scenario, the 10-year rate would have been hovering at around 6% to 6.50%. So I don't think the 10-year yield is suppressed because of anything else. I think it's mainly because of I think it is basically the OMO interventions are being held in a timely manner, not that they are pushing the yields too lower. And see, even if you see right now, the 10-year is hovering at around 590 levels.
Correct.
So it's not that the 10-year yield has basically softened to a large extent, even after the very accommodative policy minutes. Plus, even today we saw the 10-year US yields going down by around 17, 18 basis points. Even though the 10-year in India has gone down by around 2, 3 basis points only. So I think the markets are behaving in a very orderly fashion. It's not getting too it's not getting extreme on both the sides. Something which we saw in the month of August, when the 10-year yield had gone up by around 40 basis points, by around 30 basis points in just 7 trading sessions. So I think the markets are behaving in a very orderly manner, and I think this would continue for some period of time. So the broader range which I would given is 5.60 to 6%, but I think it would remain in the 570 to 590, 95 zone for at least for this financial year.
Right. And then with this, Anand, if you see that the RBI has been selling short dated bonds, do you think they are risking a rise at the short end of the yield curve, which might, probably even make it more attractive for banks who are actually trying to preserve capital and their option value of liquid assets to park excessive savings in their short term instruments and avoid lending or buying long dated bonds? Do you think this entire scenario probably could be counterproductive for both its monetary and fiscal objectives?
See, what is happening is there was a lot of FDI inflows also, which we saw in the last couple of months. So I think our foreign exchange reserves have gone up by around 70, 80 billion dollars. So what RBI was also doing is sterilizing some of these forex inflows that were coming, and since they were buying dollars from the system, they were releasing rupee liquidity into the system. So there was too much of a liquidity glut, so as to say, in the system. And if simultaneously they were to do OMS also, that would have released more liquidity in the system. So they devised this operation twist, whereby they were buying at the shorter end of the curve and selling at the longer end of the curve, so that this becomes liquidity neutral. So in a manner, it has helped not feeding in extra liquidity into the system, because that could have been counterproductive. What RBI has done is has managed it very smartly, and without releasing any extra liquidity into the system. It is basically the kind of liquidity that would have been expected in which case. We have seen liquidity hovering between the 2 lakh to 5 lakh crore zone, where I think it is comfortable for both the banks and for the RBI. And banks have been able to park in the reverse repo window of the RBI. So, and plus the kind of liquidity which is there, I don't think banks are making too much of a negative carry also at these levels, because the deposit rates are also getting repriced simultaneously.
Right. And do you think a valuable policy tool that remains underutilized by the RBI is debt management, or probably even if you call it the optimal structuring of government borrowings through debt securities of varying features and tenors?
Sorry, I couldn't get you.
I'm saying another policy tool that remains underutilized by the RBI is debt management. Do you agree with something like that?
No, I wouldn't say so, because if you see, the markets have been behaving in a very orderly manner, and the objective, all the objectives are being met, whether be the government borrowing or the state government borrowing or the corporate borrowing, because there's room for everyone. Government is not crowding out any basically the corporate borrowings. So I think the objectives are being met for everyone. So I think markets are behaving in a very orderly manner, and which is the objective of any prudent policy. So my sense is I'll give full marks to the central banker for achieving all the objectives in such a brilliant manner.
Right. And very lastly, Anand, taking all the global events into consideration, we know that the US results are not out yet. So there is no major direction anyone's able to gauge out of it. And that's what would cause volatility. Plus, you have the Fed meet, which is lined up. There is, pressure with regards to where crude is concerned. Now, taking all of these episodes into consideration, you have Brexit as well, which is on the tender hooks. How do you see the Indian rupee performing from here on? And I mean, what levels would you be tracking in the near term?
So I think the the USD INR pair is going to trade in the 73 to 76 zone. Possibly it could touch a low of 72.80, 85, and it on the upside it could touch the 76 band. I think there is comfort on both the sides, because if the rupee were to appreciate sharply, I think possibly RBI could beef up its reserves at those levels. And at higher levels, if there's some outflow which is going to happen because of the volatility in the emerging markets, I think our reserves are more than enough to cushion any such move. So I think I would give at least for the next couple of months, I think rupee is expected to remain in the 73 to 76 zone. And to give possibly, I would like to narrow it down to say 73.50 to 75.50.
Right. So those are the levels we should be tracking with the Indian rupee as well. Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anand, so much for joining us on the show. It was a pleasure to speak to you and great insights about the money market as well as on the equity front as well. And clearly from here on, I mean, everyone is expecting some bit of stability to remain. Maybe there could be mild corrections that we could be seeing, but let's see, hoping for the best. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well, and stay safe. And we should see you soon.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you.